If you turned on the news this morning, you probably saw headlines like this. Thousands of Kurds crossed from Iraq into Iran, launching ground offensive. Fox News cited U.S. government officials. AP, CNN, and the Jerusalem Post quickly followed with similar reports. And right after that, Iran announced it had fired 3 missiles at Iraq's Kurdish autonomous region. All of this happened within a single day. Many of you probably had one immediate question. Who exactly are the Kurds? This ethnic group suddenly appearing in the middle of a war involving Iran, Israel, and the United States. The news treats it as common knowledge, yet most people don't truly understand it. Today's video starts from that very question. We'll walk through who the Kurds are, what the armed organizations associated with them actually are, and why they are being pulled back into the center of a Middle Eastern war at this very moment. But first, one thing must be said clearly. Some of what is being reported right now has been confirmed as fact. Some of it is still at the level of claims and allegations. Before drawing conclusions in the heat of the moment, it's important to calmly examine what has actually been verified. We'll make that distinction together as we go. If you had to define the Kurds in one sentence, it would be this. They are the world's largest ethnic group without a country of their own. Estimated population between 30 million and 45 million people. In the Middle East, they are the 4th largest ethnic group, after Arabs, Turks, and Persians. Yet these tens of millions of people live scattered across 4 countries, yet with not a single independent state to call their own. Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria, they are spread across the mountainous border regions of these 4 nations. They have their own language, their own culture, and thousands of years of history. Kurdish is a language closely related to Persian. Some Kurds follow the indigenous Yazidi religion, some are Muslim, some are Christian. In other words, the Kurds are not defined by a single religion. They are a people united by language, culture, and geographic identity. To understand why they have never had a country, we need to go back about 100 years. After the First World War ended, the Ottoman Empire collapsed. In that process, the Kurds received a promise from Britain. Stand with us, and we will give you an independent state. The Kurds believed that promise and fought against the Ottoman Empire. In 1920, the Treaty of Sèvres was signed. That treaty actually included provisions for establishing a Kurdish autonomous region. The Kurdish people believed their country was finally coming into being. But just 3 years later, in 1923, the Treaty of Lausanne completely reversed everything. As the Republic of Turkey was being established, the great powers rearranged their interests, and every mention of Kurdish autonomy vanished from the new treaty without a trace. The promise was broken. This is where the Kurdish tragedy begins. From then on, the Kurds became targets of oppression wherever they lived. In Turkey, Kurdish language education was banned, and there was a period when the Kurdish identity was not officially recognized at all. In Iraq, in 1988, Saddam Hussein's regime used chemical weapons on the Kurdish village of Halabja, massacring approximately 5,000 people. In Iran and Syria, political repression continued for decades. There was only one time, just once, that the Kurds established a country of their own. In 1946, in the Mahabad region of northwestern Iran, the Republic of Mahabad was founded. It was the only independent Kurdish state in history, but it didn't last even a year. It was destroyed by the Iranian government's forces in 1947. A 1-year country. That is the entirety of Kurdish independence. Knowing this history helps us understand why the Kurds still respond when great powers come calling. Having no country means having no shield. And having no shield means you must always reach for someone's hand just to survive. Now, an important distinction must be made. When people hear Kurds in the news, many automatically picture armed militants. This is a serious misunderstanding. The Kurds are an ethnic group, tens of millions of ordinary people. Farmers, merchants, doctors, students. You cannot put these people in the same category as armed organizations. Just as it would be strange to automatically think of the South Korean military whenever someone says Korean, it is a false framing to automatically associate the Kurds with combatants. Kurdish armed organizations are just one part of this people. Within the Kurdish nation, there are dozens of political organizations and armed factions with different ideologies and goals. They don't all think alike, and they don't all act alike. The groups currently reported to be moving against Iran are specifically Iranian Kurdish armed factions that oppose the Iranian government. This distinction matters because if the misunderstanding spreads that all Kurds are fighting Iran, tens of millions of civilians could become targets. Separating the ethnic group from the armed factions is not just an academic exercise. It is directly connected to the safety of real people. So, who are the Kurdish armed groups actually involved? Let's go through them. The first is the Kurdistan Democratic Party of Iran, known as KDPY or KDP. Founded in 1945, it is the oldest of Iran's Kurdish armed organizations. It was the very group that planted the seeds of the Mohabbat Republic. After the Iranian Revolution in 1979, a major armed uprising was launched around this organization. It is currently based in Iraq's Kurdistan region and is believed to have a combat force of around 1,200 fighters. Its leader, Mustafa Hijri, is the person who spoke directly by phone with President Trump in early March 2026. The second is the Kurdistan Freedom Party, known as PAK, founded in the 1990s, also based in Iraq's Kurdistan region, estimated to have around 7,000 fighters. A PAK official directly told AP that the United States had requested their support, a statement considered one of the key pieces of evidence in this situation. The group also has experience fighting alongside Iraqi Kurdish Peshmerga forces on the front lines against ISIS. The third is the Kurdistan Free Life Party, known as PJAK, founded in 2004, with its main base in the rugged Kandil mountain range along the Iran-Iraq border. Strongly left-wing in ideology, PJAK has very close ideological ties with Turkey's PKK. The two organizations are known to share significant portions of their leadership and intelligence. Estimated to have 1,000 to 3,000 fighters, a notable portion of whom are women. Iran designates PJAK as a terrorist organization, as does Turkey. However, the European Union and the United Nations do not. The fourth is the Kamala Party. Founded in 1969, originating from the Iranian Kurdish left-wing student movement. It is split into several factions, but all share a common platform of secular democracy and federalism. A Kamala official told AP directly that the group's forces were ready to cross the border within 1 to 10 days. These four organizations, along with a fifth Iranian Kurdish faction, officially formed a unified coalition on February 22, 2026, just 3 days before the U.S.-Israeli airstrikes on Iran began. The timing is significant. It means contacts between these groups and the United States had already been taking place months before the war started. CNN, citing sources, reported that CIA, a support for Iranian Kurdish organizations, had already begun months before the conflict broke out. What appeared to be a sudden war had, beneath the surface, been in the works for a long time. Now, let's separate clearly what has been verified from what remains at the level of claims. President Trump spoke with Kurdish leaders. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed this directly. And Israel is supporting Kurdish militias active in western Iran. An Israeli government official stated this publicly. Iran fired missiles at Kurdish organization headquarters in Iraq's Kurdistan region. Iran's government announced this directly, and the BBC confirmed that 2 Kurdish opposition bases were struck, with 1 killed and 3 wounded. Kurdish armed factions are massing forces near the Iraq-Iran border. This has been cross-confirmed by multiple outlets citing PAK officials, Kamala officials, and U.S. and Israeli officials. However, the most explosive headline, that Kurds have already entered Iranian territory and launched a full ground offensive, remains disputed. This was reported primarily by Fox News, citing a single anonymous U.S. official. Iran flatly denied it. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps warned that any infiltration attempt would face a severe response. More remarkably, the Iraqi Kurdish autonomous government also denied it, calling the reports clear lies, and stating that not a single Iraqi Kurd had crossed the border. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth stated that the Defense Department is not providing weapons to forces inside Iran, but he did not say no U.S. government agency at all is involved. That distinction matters. So, as of now, Kurdish armed forces massing toward the Iranian border and U.S. and Israeli support for them are confirmed through multiple channels. But whether a full-scale ground war has actually begun or forces are still positioned and waiting cannot yet be determined. There are no field photographs, no independently verified reports from journalists on the ground, only statements from anonymous officials. Now, let's step back and look at the bigger picture. Why are the Kurds being pulled into this war right now? On February 2nd, 2026, the United States and Israel launched a large-scale air campaign against Iran, targeting nuclear facilities, military installations, and missile production sites. Iran chose to fight back, and the war moved into a prolonged phase. Air and naval operations continued, but an argument emerged that a decisive blow would require a ground component. And here the U.S. faces a dilemma. The Trump administration is deeply reluctant to deploy American troops directly onto Iranian soil. The memories of Iraq and Afghanistan are still fresh. Thousands of soldiers killed, trillions of dollars spent, and ultimately failure. Israel faces the same calculus. Deploying Israeli ground forces into Iranian territory is diplomatically and militarily untenable. So, the concept of a proxy ground war emerged. Instead of fighting directly, support forces that oppose the Iranian government and ignite internal pressure from within Iran itself. And the Kurdish armed groups were selected as the most suitable for this role. Why the Kurds? They are already organized. Among Iran's anti-government forces, Kurdish armed factions are considered the most structured, with thousands of fighters skilled in mountain guerrilla warfare. They have a history of fighting Iran, with decades of clashes against the Revolutionary Guard. No need to train from scratch. They are geographically positioned at Iran's western border, making entry logistically straightforward. And they have a powerful motive, an independent state. For a people who have lived without a country for over a century, the prospect of autonomy offered in exchange for supporting a war is a temptation that is very hard to refuse. From the U.S. perspective, the strategic core of this is dividing Iranian military attention. With the U.S. and Israel bombing from the air and Kurdish forces pressing from the west on the ground, Iran must respond on two fronts simultaneously. The New York Times directly analyzed this point, that Kurdish participation in a ground war could disperse Iranian forces and create openings for U.S.-Israeli strikes. Israel's stated goal goes even further. All Israeli officials have openly said the aim is for Kurdish militias to seize portions of territory in Iran's Kurdish regions, trigger a broader uprising, and ultimately bring about the collapse of the Iranian theocratic regime. Imagine how threatening this situation must feel from Iran's perspective. Bombs falling from the sky, while on the western border, armed groups that have fought against them for decades are advancing with U.S. and Israeli backing. Iran's missile strikes on Kurdish headquarters in Iraq were precisely for this reason, to preemptively eliminate the threat. Several countries are watching this situation with deep unease. Iraq is in an extraordinarily complicated position. Having Iranian Kurdish armed factions operate from its territory, territory is, from the Iraqi central government's perspective, it's the equivalent of allowing its own soil to serve as a launch pad for another country's war. Iran and Iraq share a long and deep historical relationship, and Iran-aligned forces within Iraq remain powerful. Turkey is anxious for a different reason. PJAK is essentially viewed by Ankara as the same organization as Turkey's PKK. If PJAK gains strength and seizes territory in northwestern Iran, right along Turkey's border, that is a direct threat to Turkish national security. Syria is no exception. Syrian Kurdish forces still exist in northern Syria, and if a new front opens pressuring Iran, those Kurdish forces will inevitably feel the ripple effects. The Middle East is structured such that touching one point shakes every other. This cannot be read simply as an ethnic conflict. If you do, you see less than half the picture. Yes, the reason Kurdish armed forces are appearing in this war is not because of the logic of national self-determination. It is because of the strategic needs of the United States and Israel. The CIA is supporting them. Trump is personally calling their leaders. Israel's Mossad is involved, not out of empathy for Kurdish independence, but because these groups are useful for destabilizing the Iranian regime. Provide support, but avoid making it official. Don't deploy U.S. troops directly. The weapons go through the CIA, not the Department of Defense. All of these mean the same thing. We will act, but we will not be held accountable. For the Kurds, this is a familiar irony. It has happened before. From 2014 onward, the the forces that fought most bravely against ISIS in northern Syria were Kurdish militias. The U.S. trained them, armed them, and fought alongside them. Kurdish fighters bled to drive ISIS out. And then in 2019, Trump abruptly withdrew U.S. troops from Syria. The ally they trusted turned its back overnight. Turkish forces moved in to attack the Kurds in the vacuum left behind, and the devastation was close to ethnic cleansing. And now, Trump is extending his hand to those same Kurds again, this time to strike Iran. For the Kurds, this is a person who betrayed them coming back to ask for help. Yet some Kurdish leaders are still willing to take that hand. That alone tells you how desperate the situation of this people truly is. For a stateless nation, sometimes grabbing a great power's hand, even knowing you may be used, appears to be the only viable path to survival. As one official from an Iranian Kurdish armed faction summed it up in a single sentence, "This is our window of opportunity." 100 years of history is compressed into that short phrase. Opportunities have been so rare that the desperation to seize one, even at great risk, is overwhelming. The Kurds are entering this war of their own volition, and at the same time, they are being moved as a piece in the strategic design of great powers. You need to hold both truths simultaneously to see the full picture. The Kurds are a people, but in war, they become a terrain, a corridor through which someone else's forces pass, a buffer zone that absorbs someone else's pressure. On the map of the Middle East, the land where the Kurds live has always been at the edge of every front line. That is not a coincidence. In an age when news moves faster than understanding, the most dangerous thing is not ignorance. It is mistaking incomplete information for the complete picture. Seeing a headline that says, "Kurds launch ground offensive," and immediately treating it as fact, without checking whether it is confirmed or alleged, which outlet reported it, on what sources, and how both sides have responded, means we may be unwittingly enlisting in someone else's information war. In wartime, every party tries to spread the narrative most favorable to itself. The United States, Israel, Iran, and the Kurdish factions are all doing exactly that. Seeing facts through that noise requires the habit of stepping back, cooling down, and verifying sources. Who are the Kurds? The answer is not simple. In over 30 million people who have lived without a country for more than a century. Within that history, dozens of organizations operating with different orientations and goals. Some are left-wing, some are nationalist, some are connected to Turkey, some to the United States, some to Israel. And through all of that complexity, they share one common dream: to have their own country on their own land, just once. Like the memory left by the Republic of Mahabad, which lasted barely a year before disappearing. That dream has not faded in over a century. Whether it will be exploited, betrayed, or perhaps realized in this war will be decided by how the conflict unfolds. What we can do is watch that process with clear eyes and with our humanity intact.